I wanted to hurt people the way I was hurt. And sometimes I did, sometimes I did. It came out in a lot of different ways. Some of the people I cared about, some of the people who were close to me, and some people I didn't know, random people, but got me into a lot of trouble with the police. Yeah, I just didn't care about myself as a teen growing up. So, and look, I had some amazing supportive people around me. Like my mum is amazing. I've got an amazing family. But that one niggling thing of kind of being slightly lost about what a man is, not feeling like I fit in rooms with other men, in groups of people and stuff like that. Just like having this niggling doubt about myself all the time made me quite a difficult person to be around growing up and trying to explore that. So yeah, I didn't know that's why at the time. I didn't know it had anything to do with, not having my dad around. Like my dad, when he was around, he was in prison most of my childhood growing up. That was like France. He used to say he was in France. So to me and my younger brothers, like anytime, my mum would be like, he's in France, or someone would say he's in France or whatever, that was like code for prison. Didn't know it at the time. It's something I learned later on, but he was in France a lot of times. So, you know what I mean? It was like, so there was a few phone conversations and stuff like that with him, but never had him there. And then when he would turn up, he would just turn up randomly at my house and stuff. And one thing I always remember is that I always wanted to go with him, right? Because he was a superhero to me. I didn't care as much as the other adults cared about the fact that he was, in and out of my life and what damage that was doing to me and stuff like that. I was just like, I want to see my dad. Everyone else has got a dad. Why haven't I got a dad? I want to know my dad. So my mum I got to give my mum a lot of credit, because she would never badmouth him in front of me, even though I know that she wanted to. And she would always give me the option. So anytime he would come, she was like, would you like to go? And I would obviously go. And then I'd come back crying because something had happened, like one of the, my dad drank a lot. I remember one time he took me to a party. It was like a family party. It was like after a christening or something like that. And he got so drunk and they threw him out. He had a fight with someone in the party and he got thrown out. And I remember having to I'm maybe like 10, 11 tops, having to carry him home, literally down the street, like carry this guy home to my grand's, to his mum's, being chased by the police in the car, him pushing my head down in the back. I just remember that image of him going like, look, keep your head down and stuff like that. And he was getting chased by police. And I laugh about it now. It's more an uneasy laugh that's happening. This is not me being like proud of any of this. It's just, those were my images. Those are my images and memories of like being with my dad. But without fail, my mum said, you want to go back? I'll go back, I wanted a dad. He weren't the best dad, but I wanted someone there. And kind of eventually when I got a bit older and I was kind of angry with him for how he treated me, it became, I'm going to find other figures, other dad figures, other role models in my community. So the local bad boys, the local dealers, they became dads to me, and I started to follow in their footsteps a bit, do you know what I mean? And adopt the same attitude, adopt the same swagger. I think even joining So Solid was never about music for me in the beginning. It was about belonging. It was about it was the first time, I was part of a gang, and there was a lot of older men in there in that group that looked after me, took care of me, and seemingly at the time loved me. Do you know what I'm saying? As much as, as far as I was concerned. So I spent a lot of years bouncing around like that. The funny thing is about it is I was having success throughout this throughout this process, like making films and successful TV shows and music and stuff like that. So I guess that I had talent, I had a gift that was shining through, but learning how to be a man, I didn't get I didn't know. You know, I thought that was aggression. I thought that was, don't take no shit from anyone. Do you know what I mean? Don't cry. Don't take no shit. Be hard. You know, try and stand up for yourself. But emotionally, I was incapable of the other stuff that really builds the real picture of what a man is.
Where does the anger come from in that situation of like abandonment, needing a father, the father not meeting the expectation that you want him to be? I often hear it with kids, like you're desperate for your father to like be a father, and you repeatedly give them another chance to be that person, and they continue to let you down over and over and over again. And it's funny because I've sat here with like child psychologists and Gabor Mate and all of these geniuses that study children at a young age. And it's funny how the one thing that Gabor said to me, who's maybe like the number one child psychologist in the world, said to me, he was like, children in any context think everything's about them. They're narcissists. So if the parents are arguing, they interpret that as something about them. And even in the context of what you've described, your father's behavior there, he's got his own problem, clearly, but you interpret it as meaning something about you.
Of course, yeah.
And have you been able to understand what the interpretation was? How you interpreted that situation?
I think not in that much detail, but I guess, you know, surface wise, that I wasn't good enough. You know, I can only say that because of how I've treated myself. Because I generally, I never think I'm good enough to be doing anything that I'm doing. You know, I always feel like there's always like a sly little bit of me, and it's like, they're gonna catch me out next week. Like I shouldn't have this opportunity. You know, I'm always going to make the most of it. I'm always going to prove to people that I'm good enough to be here. But there's always that niggling doubt of what the other person's thinking about me. You know, and that's something that I'm still working on today. I'm still working on the whole process of understanding, like, you know, someone else's opinion of me is none of my business. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and just accepting that, you know, going into a room, and if I see people talking in the corner, wondering, are they talking about me? You know, having those, like, that sort of thought process is tough, but I think it stems from rejection. I think it stems from, you know, being abandoned slightly. I mean, I hate to use that word, but because, you know, my mum will be upset about me using that terminology, but because she never understood, and bless her, you know, my mum's a very intelligent woman, but one thing she couldn't understand emotionally was the fact that I still wanted him. You know, and even, you know, up until he died and after he died, there was loads of moments where I was broken, and she was just like, what is wrong with you? Like, why, you know, you didn't really know him like that. Like, why are you know, she just didn't get that. Yeah, I just wanted him to be proud. You know, if anything, you know, I'd just love him to see me now. I'd love him to understand, like, who I've become, what I've achieved. I think in the beginning that was like a stick your finger up sort of thing. Like, even without you, I did great, you know. But the reality is, like, the last encounter I had with him was the most beautiful encounter ever, you know, maybe that I've ever had with any person that I love. Like, and he said some things to me that really have stuck with me, you know. Really, I changed my life going forward, but, you know, he didn't care. He was like, I mean, he cared about me, but he didn't care about the stuff that I was doing. He was like, that's meaningless. It's like, you know, all of that can be taken away at any time. You know, I'm glad you've got a talent. I'm glad you feel fulfilled in, like, what you're trying to achieve in life and your life goals and that. But I wouldn't care if you did that or you didn't. It'd still be my son, and I'd still love you as much as I do. And he was always concerned about my fight for perfection. Because I spend a lot of time, like, trying to dig deep to make things perfect, right? And it's only now I know that nothing can be perfect. There's no such thing, you know. And I think I eventually understood, like, you know, it's not always going to go my way, right? But I have to be slightly more willing to adapt, to accept that. And when I have been more willing to accept it, good things have happened, you know. I got to be open to it.
He passed away in 2005, right?
Yeah.
And by that time, you had sort of rekindled your relationship to some degree. When I was reading through, I think it's So Solid, page 12, you referred to him at that time as a waste of space, which I guess was a reflection of how you were feeling about him at that time.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny you bring that book up because I won't even read that book.
Really?
I don't even think I've ever read it, if I'm honest with you. And I mean, there's not that much to read, if I'm honest. It's a lot of pictures, but yeah, probably that's how I felt for a lot of the time. I think those last 2 weeks when I was shooting Get Rich or Die Trying, I was in Canada. He forced his way out to come and see me because, you know, he knew how I felt about him and he knew he only had weeks left to live. And he was like, look, I have to come and see you. And he came and he lived with me for those like 2 weeks. And I was already in the process of like, so I had this thing back then that I was going to die when I was like 33. It'd been something that I said to my mum from a young age. And she was like, randomly one day at like 6, 7, you was like, you're going to die at 33 or whatever. And she was like, I don't know where you got that from, but you've been obsessed with that. And as an adult, I was obsessed with the fact that I was going to die young, right? I wasn't going to survive past that age. So I got someone to start filming me every day. And I got a friend to just start documenting my like daily life on camera. And when I went to Canada to shoot, I took the camera with me and just said, look, I'll get some footage myself while you're not here. My dad came and I just decided to turn the camera on. So I did. So every night, you know, while he was there, he was like, you know, go and get me some weed. This guy had lung cancer, could hardly breathe. He was like, go and get me some weed and, you know, I'd get him some drink and stuff like that. And we'd be sitting there for hours and hours. And I'd just put the camera down on the table and that and just film him and just ask him the most random questions just about life. Like, you know, where was you? Where was you at this time? Where was you that time? Whatever. And the guy was like, for context, when I was in prison in like 2001, right? And he wrote to me a few times. And it was the first time I understood that my dad was illiterate. Like he couldn't read or write. So these letters were so like, it's just fucked up, man. It was just like, I had no idea that he had that issue. And I read these letters. I was like, wow. So that gave me another level to my hate for him. It was like, now you're dumb as well. Like, yeah. Do you know what I mean? It was like, yeah, I really don't like it. Like, I don't know. So it was evil, but it was just another excuse for me not to like him, right? So cut back to being in Canada. I sat down with him and filmed him and found out that he was one of the most intelligent people I know, just from being streetwise, just from life experience. Do you get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like it actually burnt me because I didn't want him to know anything. I didn't want him to have anything to really offer me in the end when I delved deeper into who he was as a person, but all the things I was going through with women, with life, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was like, he had a wealth of knowledge that he could speak to me about. He couldn't write it down, couldn't really articulate it in the greatest way, but just listening to his kind of anecdotal sort of stories and whatever, I got what I needed to get from it. And I filmed him kind of going through it. But there was also like a huge fear as well. You know, I realized in that moment that he had genuine excuses for being the person he was. I mean, he grew up didn't have the greatest upbringing. You know, he was in care. He was slightly neglected by his own parents, you know, and, you know, he was the bad kid of the bunch, and he just kind of got pushed out, and that kind of led to his life, and things happened, etc., etc. But I understood it from his point of view when I heard him talk about it, and I was like, actually, okay, I can see why you would be the person that you are, and actually, maybe you did me a favor by not being there too much, because who would I be? You know, would I be the person I am today? And but then, you know, after realizing I love this guy and I'm enjoying spending time with him, and we were like good friends, and we went to clubs together out there. This guy's like, you know, thin, like wafer thin, like on death's doorstep. And he was making the effort to come out with me and, you know, rave and do all of this stuff. And, but at night, at bedtime, I laid in my bed awake every night, just staring at the ceiling, thinking he's going to die here, because he was just coughing all through the night, man. It was like, you know, like he was coughing up his lungs. Like, I was like, whoa. I was praying that it didn't happen, you know, there. And then he died, man. He'd like, you know, he left, literally got off the plane. They rushed him to hospital because he was going on the plane, rushed him to hospital. He died whilst I was filming. And, you know, it wasn't the best way that I found out. I was filming at the time. I was doing a scene with 50. And it was like a really emotional scene outside on location. And the vibe just changed on set. Like, you know, in between takes, everyone stopped talking. It was quiet. It was like this. And like, the producers were just like looking at me. And I was like, nah. I knew. Do you know what I mean? Something had happened. I knew something was wrong. And they was like, look, we're going to take a break. Just go and call home. You need to call home, Ashley. So I went to my trailer and called my partner at the time, and she was like, I'm sorry, man. I mean, he's gone. So it's tough. It was tough. It was a tough moment. It was a tough moment. Yeah, and I was broken. I was broken. I never realized it would affect me that much. It broke me. And crazy, but the one thing I remember from that moment is I went to my trailer, I broke down. Some of the actors came, like Joy Bryant, she came in and she was just like, just hugged me, and I was just crying and stuff. And 50 came in and was, and he won't remember this, and I know it wasn't malice or there's any bad intentions, but he was like, I'm sorry to hear about your dad. And then just started talking about a scene to someone, you know, when someone's like, sorry to hear about your dad, man. Anyway, whatever. And I was like, you know, talking to him after, it was like, he's been through some shit, you know, that's made him really like, but I hadn't been through anything like that. No, at that point, that was my first real kind of close encounter with death, like, and having someone that meant so much to me pass away. But my first instinct was, you know, to work, to continue working. I continued working. I flew back for the funeral for literally one day, did the funeral, and then I left. I went back to work. I just plowed through and I didn't grieve. And I haven't.
You haven't?
I don't think I have. You know, I don't know what you call it. Because even like now, I want to break down now, just talking about it. I don't know. It's just like 2005, right? It's like 18 years or whatever. So, I mean, is that an indication that I haven't dealt with it enough? You know, I don't know.